of Monday, June 14th with a roll call, please.
Mayor Martini?
Here.
City Clerk Patterson here. Council members Ratty? Here. Salerno?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
Kerrigan?
Here.
Schmidt?
Here.
Assistant City Manager Driscoll?
Here.
City Attorney Adams?
Here.
We have quorum.
Okay, if you'd all stand for the invocation speaker, Pastor Brad Darnus of the Sparks Nazarene Church. Is he here?
Let's see him.
Okay, if you'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance then. Mr. Salerno, would you lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next is comments from the public. If you'd like to speak under public comment, please fill out one of these cards and bring it up. I have none right now to speak under public comment. Okay, let's move on to approval of the agenda. And there's two that we're going to pull. We're going to pull the presentation by the Spark Citizens Advisory Committee. I believe Mr. Bonine was supposed to be here, and he's become a grandfather, and he's out of town, so he won't be here. And then we want to pull 6.2 for follow-up. It's not ready to be voted on yet by the council. Anybody else want to pull anything?
What was the one, 6.2, and what was the other one?
4.1. Okay, if there's no other changes, looking for a motion, please.
Move to approve.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's moved by Councilman Salerno, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve the agenda as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Sorry. Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, next is a proclamation, United States Army Week. Sergeant Michael Cole, are you here, sir? Yes, come on up. All right. Go ahead and have a seat, and then I'll do one thing. Let's take number 3 first, recommendation to approve minutes of May 18th and May 24th. Any discussion? If not, looking for a motion.
Move to approve.
Yep. Moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Councilwoman Ratty to approve the minutes of May 18th and 24th. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Now, Sergeant Cole, welcome. I'll go ahead and read the proclamation and then present it to you, and then if you want to say a few words, we'd be very appreciative. Whereas the United States Army was established by the First Continental Congress on the 14th day of June 1775, and whereas the United States Army exists to defend the freedom of our citizens and our nation's security interests, and whereas many citizens of Sparks have served their nation and given the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our freedoms as members of the United States Army, and whereas it is proper to recognize the United States Army annually on its birthday and to thank those who have served and those who are presently serving. Now, therefore, I, Gino R. Martini, Mayor of the City of Sparks, Nevada, do hereby proclaim June 11th through the 18th, 2010 as United States Army Week, and urge all citizens to join me in this salute to express our gratitude to those who have served and those who are now serving to protect our nation and its freedoms.
Ladies, gentlemen, on behalf of the United States Army and Recruiting Command and my office here in Sparks, we want to say thank you for taking this time out of your busy schedule to recognize the service of our men and women, past, present, and future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant. Thank you for being here. Appreciate what you do for us.
Thank you.
Okay, next is consent items. Anybody want to pull a consent item 5.1 through 5.10?
Yes, 510.
5.10? Okay, anybody else? Not looking for a motion. Mr. Smith.
Move to approve consent items 5.1 through 5.9.
Have a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Councilman Kerrigan to approve consent items 5.1 through 5.9. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay, Mr. Salerno, 510.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll be abstaining on this agenda item as this is a client of mine.
Okay. Any discussion on 510? If not, looking for a motion. Mr. Smith,
Move to approve consent item 5.10.
do you have a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by, I believe, Councilman Kerrigan to approve agenda item 510. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes 4-1 with Mr. Salerno abstaining. Okay. General business, 6.1, consideration and possible acceptance of a donation from the Helen Close Charitable Foundation in the amount of $17,240. Chief Kiefer, welcome.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Council, Mayor. Just recently, we retired a police service dog, Rocky. His handler was Jason Edmondson, who fulfilled his 4-year obligation. Rocky was 9 years old, and we thought it would be a good time to rotate the dogs out because the other police service dog, Simbo, the 8-year-old shepherd, is going to be near retirement also. So with that, we sought the public for donations, and the Helen Close Foundation again came through. If you remember, in 2005, they donated $58,000 to start up our canine program. They are giving us a donation of $17,240 that I would recommend that we accept so we could use that money and purchase another police service dog.
Questions, Mr. Smith?
Chief, isn't it about 60,000 for the complete training of the dog and everything, or is that, what's the 17,000 covered? Is it just,
It's about $30,000, $32,000 for the training and the purchase of the dog. We received $17,000, so the remainder, $15,000, we will use state forfeiture funds.
okay. Does
make
the officer have to go down and bond with this dog, or the dog just comes up, the dog's trained already, so?
Yeah, you purchase older dogs, so they're more mature and they're regimented to training already. We selected Officer Chris Bear as the canine handler. He's in Southern California right now and is matched up with a dog.
Okay.
And I can't remember, it's either 10 or 11 weeks that he will stay down there with the
Okay.
dog, go through training. He'll come back up and it'll just work the bite aspect of a police service dog. Then we'll send the handler and the dog back down again for, I don't have the times here, 2 to 3 weeks, I believe, for drug detection. So the dog will be multi-use. So
Okay.
it's extensive training and pricey.
Sure, thank you.
Mr. Kerrigan?
You know, I like the line in here that said the dogs appear to be aging at a quick pace. I feel that way sometimes too, but what do you do with where do they retire service dogs?
Well, we're working that out. Usually you sell them to the handler for $1 and they retire with the handler.
Oh, okay.
And that's what, I just received some paperwork today from Dan Moran on selling Rocky for $1 to Jason Edmondson. Timing would have it approximately 1 week ago, Simbo, the German Shepherd, in training, went paralyzed in the back legs. So it's going to be uncertain, his future. They did surgery, removed a lesion from the spine, and it's hit and miss on his mobility, whether he'll be able to return or not. But that's what we usually do with the dog.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks, Chief. Okay, any other questions? Okay, if not, looking for a motion. Mr. Schmidt, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion, we approve item 6.1 as outlined by staff and accept the donation of $17,240 from the Helen Close Charitable Foundation.
Mr. Smith?
Second?
Moved by Councilman Schmidt, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve agenda item 6.1. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimously. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
6.2 has been pulled. Okay, 6.3, consideration of and possible approval of resolution number 3175, designating certain employees as court administrator and judicial assistant. Mr. Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Steve Driscoll, Assistant City Manager for the record. I will be kind of going over 6.3 through 6.8, and then I'll join you again later today. What you have before you are several resolutions that are dealing with different populations of the city, and in these resolutions defined pay, salary, benefits, and in this particular item in 6.3, this is a new resolution, and it's carving out the court administrator and the judicial assistant specifically because they are addressed in the charter, and the hiring and the firing and the maintenance of those people are directly tied to the administrative judge. And so we felt that while these positions have resided in other resolutions at this point, this would be the proper time to identify those two particular people and their relationship in the charter and go from there. So we then created a resolution that was based on the management professional technical resolution and also the confidential resolution, which closely mirrors some of the things in OE3. And so at this point, there's no new benefits or changes to these folks than what they realized in their previous resolution, but it is isolating them for charter purposes. There are a couple of things that are in here that are different than what you've seen in the past in some of the others, which are voluntary pay or benefit reductions. This group is allowed to do voluntary reductions if they would like to. There's also reimbursements for tuition, which is what we've always done, which is something that could be used here. There is a new piece that you're going to see throughout all of the resolutions that we do today, that as of January 1st of 2011, we are going away from writing manual paychecks, and we'll be requiring everyone to do direct deposit. There was an incident with Washoe County previously that had a problem with direct deposit from the standpoint that they were required to use a county-sponsored debit card from a bank of the county's choice. The bank then in turn charged transaction fees to the employees. That was grieved and successfully won in court that was not correct. We would not be doing anything like that. We would be asking the employees to have their own accounts and have their own relationship with their banks. We would transfer 100% of what they are due through their employment agreement with the city to go forward. But we'll start that, giving everyone proper notice that we're going to be doing that piece. Sure.
Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to stop you, but it looks like you're going to put them all together. Is that what you're doing? Six?
You're going to go over all of them? I'm not going to go over all of them. I'm just going to highlight a couple things on this one, and then I'll go, because there are some different ones, different things throughout. I can go over all if you'd like, and then we can do particular details. I'm just kind of trying to highlight on this particular one's different than what these employees would have enjoyed in previous relationships.
Maybe I can go ahead and just cover one blank question. You can tell me if one of these covered or not, because I thought we were going to take them one by one. But does any of these resolutions, and this is a question that's posed to me, so I want to make sure I get it on record, does any of these resolutions reclassify any employees that put them into a different pay scale, higher pay scale, or changes their rate of pay in any way at this time?
No.
Everybody stays the same in the same place. So
Everybody stays the same.
if there is a employee reclassification, does that come back to the council?
The reclassification, we have done reclassifications recently as part of the budgetary process, and that was in front of the council. There is an outstanding issue with doing some changes in the OE3 agreement, where we're pooling some job classifications. That one has been kind of on hold for a while, waiting for response from the bargaining unit. We've not heard back recently, and so we've given notice to that bargaining unit that we're going to move forward, because technically it's a management right to do that. And in those cases, we will be looking at the new classifications, and we would make modifications if necessary to match the new job titles and pay scales with the old job titles and pay scales, But that is nothing like that's happening here.
Okay.
You will see that in the future.
And then my second question, and this actually came up through, my own personal business that a customer called me to ask a question, but since we're doing it too, is it lawful for us or a business or anybody to require somebody to have a bank account?
I don't know the answer to that question. I do know that one of the reasons that we were looking at doing this is it saves processing and transaction fees, and this is something that our previous finance director had discussed and wanted to bring forward, and it was something that he had done successfully in Carson City, and that it had survived all of the legal tests and legal questions at that point in time. So your specific question, I don't know the answer to, but we can find out. And that's part of why we're giving notice now, is to make sure that as questions are asked, we can answer and move ourselves forward.
Because that is one that I do need things to be asked, because I think that's a very valid point. I mean, is having a checking account, was that a condition of employment? Or having an account that you could transfer, was that a condition of employment? And are we changing condition of employment for somebody that they have to have? I'm sure we obviously done the research to find out if we have employees that don't have accounts, but there is, I think in some segments of our population, the last I saw, there's as high as 50% of the population does not have a formal banking account. And so that would preclude people from being employed by the city if one of our hiring terms was that you had to have an established banking account. So I'm just curious whether that's ever been brought up in a legal position, because I think it's going to be sooner or later. Somebody's going to bring it up, and there's going to have to be a court ruling on it.
Mr. Smith, Steve Driscoll again for the record. We will contact Carson City and find out the research that they did in order to do this, because Mr. Minton, who was our previous finance director, had gone through all the tests and the things and had answered all the questions and found themselves able to do it. They did so without grievance. And so we were relying on that information, and we'll go forward, because the individual processing to do checks and to create those, it's getting to be fairly significant for a very small number of people that are currently on staff. So we'll get those questions answered before it goes into place. This is something that obviously is out in the future. So if it's determined that we have an issue, then we'll recoil. But at this point, it was based on previous representations and the legal work being done.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
I think with that, on this particular agreement, I don't believe there's anything else of any significance that changes the relationship that these employees had in their prior resolution versus where they are now. So with that, I'd answer any other questions on the court item 6.3.
Questions on 6.3? Okay, if not, looking for a motion. Or not. Anybody want to make a motion?
Oh, I thought we were going to do them all before.
You want to do them all?
I could do it either way.
No, it doesn't.
I'm sorry, I started off doing them individually, but talked about some of the general provisions. If you'd like me to go through all of them, and we do need to come back and vote one at a time.
Okay.
At the end.
Okay, if we go through all of them and then come back and vote? Okay, go
Okay.
ahead.
I'll move on to 6.4, and I'll just kind of highlight what's in the staff report, and then I can answer individual questions about those. You will see some things that'll be similar. In 6.4, we are dealing with the assistant and senior assistant city attorneys. What you'll see with that group is that in the pay resolutions, they are holding their pay scale consistent with prior years. There was an adjustment by the attorney to where that one position has been vacated. And then that savings more than offset what would have been asked for as far as pay scale adjustments. And that was allowed by yourselves, and as we've had previous discussions on that during the budget process. Additionally, in Section 7 of this agreement, if an employee is asked to be the acting city attorney for a lengthy period of time, then the manager would have the discretion to add any potential benefits that department head has versus the person that's in the acting position. And you'll see that similar in other agreements. Additionally, We pay translation services in this resolution, and we're just making sure, because we've had some issues, that if an employee is on duty, they're being paid the translation fee, they are to do translation services. Also, something you'll see in similar into the rest of the agreements is that we've made some changes in the special pays for eyeglass replacements, cellular phones, and watches. We've added cellular phones, that if a person has a personal cellular phone, that we're allowing them to use during business time or on city business. If it's city business, then if they lose it or it's hurt, then we'll replace it. Additionally, we're adding a category that if someone wants to maintain their own personal phone and they would like to have a stipend instead of a city phone, that we'll consider that. That has some operational implications from the standpoint, we don't buy it, we don't fix it, we don't replace it, with the exception of the replacement component here. And then also the payroll deposit is here as well. And the last thing that's in this group is in the health group committee area, that's starting on anyone who is hired after July 10th or July 1st of this year. They're brought into this group brand new. They would then be subject to a 50% dependent cost for their health plan. Moving on to the...
Question, Mr. Smith?
Sir.
Steve, you mentioned the extra benefits for an acting city attorney. What's the time frame on that? I mean, are we talking a minimum of 2 weeks, or?
Typically, if we're looking at someone doing it for a couple of months, and in this case, you have a situation, if the elected official is incapacitated or something, to where he will return, he or she would return, but there's a period of time where they would not be able to do the job, and we're asking somebody to step up and do that function for more than, a 15 or 30-day period.
Well, you're going to put that,
We're
you're going
saying
to put that in writing, right? The amount of time.
That if we determine there's a period of time, and that it's reasonable, that, that it's not short in nature, but the elected official is going to come back, then we'll go. Because if the elected official for some reason was to vacate, that's a whole different process. It's a very short period of time in which there's an appointment process.
My only concern is that you specify the amount of time, and then the acting city attorney or city manager, whoever it happens to be, does all the duties that the city attorney would normally do.
They would be doing the duties of, in this case, the city attorney, and you'll see it in other places where they might be doing the department head position, but they would be doing the job, and therefore, if there was a benefit. For instance, if you had in this resolution, you had a senior assistant city attorney who doesn't get a car allowance. You're going to be asked to be the attorney for a 3-month period of time, let's just say for a surgery recovery. Then for that period of time, they're expected to go to the same meetings, do things, go back and forth. Department, whatever we do. So it would be to where we know that the position will continue and come back. It's not functional at this point. It's reasonable to promote someone and ask them to do the duties. And therefore, if there's a benefit that's based on the job, this gives the manager the ability to provide that temporarily.
It makes sense. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with that. I just want to make sure that it's just, if Chet leaves the town for 3 days and
No.
Cheryl is the acting city attorney, then,
This is
I don't
based
wanna
on
get into that.
a long-term acting
Okay.
assignment.
And just-
He's probably a bad example from the standpoint that
On several levels.
typically, as an elected official, he would be able to dictate and do things even if he's
Sure.
not able to come. But other department heads, and you'll see this similar in other agreements, that if it's open and vacated for some period
It
of
makes
time,
sense. I just wanted to,
And I wasn't aware of that provision, but it probably does explain the bare electrical wires and the puddle of water under my desk this morning.
And the singular fire,
That too, yeah.
exactly.
Just the beginning.
If I might, moving on to 6.5, which is dealing with the resolution on the position of deputy fire chief. You're pretty much seeing, or police chief, excuse me. Slight difference here. There is in the pay rates and regulations, there is the 7.5% in the next fiscal year and the 7.5% permanent reduction in the fiscal year after that, for a total of 15 over 2 years. It does in this section as well. It allows the city manager to grant benefits if this deputy position is asked to be the police chief for a period of time, which is a situation we're currently under. So it would apply to that. And then when it gets into the other compensated benefits, the cellular phone and the direct payroll deposit is in here as well. And in addition, anyone hired into this position after July 1st of 2010 would be responsible for 50% of their dependent care in the health plan. Moving into 6.6, this is dealing with confidential employees. And while the confidential employees typically mirror what happens with the operating engineers, local number 3, non-supervisory, since we've not had resolution with them, this group was conferred with, and this group chose to do some things different than the OE3 unit at this time. One thing that we did do is we did add in the appropriate language for Fair Labor Standards Act in Section 2, just because we have different types of employees here. Some are salaried, some are wage earners, and so we just needed to clean that up a little bit. In another area, this group did voluntarily, through the discussion points, do permanent reductions of the 7.5 and the 7.5 over the next 2 fiscal years. Additionally, there is the cell phone component and the direct deposit component, as well as the dependent care at 50% for people hired into this resolution after July 1st of 2010. That takes us to 6.7, which is your management professional technical group. A couple of things here. In the pay resolutions, again, 7.5 and 7.5 over the next 2 fiscal years, permanent reductions. In the acting director, acting temporary, again, if they're being asked to do the department head's job for a period of time, then they have the manager would have the option of providing certain benefits that were job related to that position. Here also we have a group that if they're getting bilingual pay, we expect them on the job to provide that service. We've added the cell phone component as well as the direct deposit component. And we've also done the 50% dependent insurance costs after July 1st, new hires. There's one additional provision in this agreement in Section 19 regarding layoff positions, our layoff procedures. Right now, in this resolution, we have resorted to the civil service position where it is based on seniority within the city. These are basically appointed employees with some exceptions, and I'll discuss those exceptions in a moment. What we're suggesting here is because these are appointed employees, that it may be, as we have our economic times and our budget times, that with the discussion that a particular service would go away and that service may take with it a particular employee, these procedures that would go in effect in 2012 would make it to where it's employee specific and there would be no bumping rights for those people that are appointed. There is a grandfather clause that we propose in this, that right now in this group, there are several employees that are incumbents that were promoted into this resolution, and they were in a civil service position, and they drugged the civil service classification with them at the time that they came in. We have over time eliminated anyone who was left that had civil service designation in their job in this agreement, and they become an appointed employee. We have several employees at this point that have the same job they had when we started doing that grandfathering. So for those few grandfathered positions, this layoff procedure, general layoff procedure by service or classification would not apply, and they would be, in fact, subject to the civil service rules, which would allow bumping rights. So that is one difference in this one that there is not in the other agreements. Moving on to 6.8 is the executive agreement. Pretty much the things you've seen at this point, with the exception in Section 2, there's a provision in Section 2 for the non-renewal of the employment agreement. All of your executive employees have annual employment agreements. And in the current agreement, it allows that if there's non-renewal, that there is a 120-day severance based on economics and the fact that any executive employee that's working here most likely would have to go out of state or find something else to do. We're suggesting that we move that 120 days to 180 days upon non-renewal. Again, this group has a 7.5% to 7.5% for 15 permanent over 2 years. The cell phone provision applies here as well as the direct deposit. And then in one of the compensated benefits, we've amended the uniform allowance for the police chief and the fire chief. The current language says that it reflects what is enjoyed by the members of their rank and file, and in this case, that would dramatically affect your fire chief from the standpoint we'll discuss later on, that if you were to accept not having the uniform allowance be permanently eliminated, the chief would be subject to that permanent elimination. We still do require him to wear a uniform, and at this point, all of your executive employees are deciding which compensated benefits that they would eliminate on their own involuntarily, so this puts one back on their plate where we don't mandate that it goes away. The second thing that's in this in compensated benefits is that several years ago, these employees received longevity. That longevity went away in lieu of receiving a bonus. The bonus situation has not been appropriate in several years, and so we're suggesting that it goes back to a longevity based on that, which then the very last thing would be to eliminate the bonus as a potential benefit. And this group, in addition, also anyone that was hired into this group after July 1st of 2010 would be responsible for 50% of their dependent coverage on their health plan. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions on any of the resolutions that I've presented in front of you.
Questions, Mr. Salerno?
Steve, what about the deposit on their payroll?
Well, that's a question. It would be the same question would be across all of these resolutions, and as I reflected, Mr. Schmidt, we'll find out the work that was done. Mr. Minton seemed to think that he had the legal questions answered, so we'll just seek what Carson City did, and then we'll review that with our attorney and determine whether or not it's an issue. If it's an issue, we'd have to back off on it.
Now, what about, I think the city council still gets paid, but what about the city council? Are you going to go to direct deposit for city council?
That would
have us do a special resolution?
That would be our preference, and it doesn't take a special resolution. It would be something that we would ask you when we get to that point that it's going to go live. Well, this is something that will be part of a conversation with the bargaining units as well. I'm not sure that it's necessarily negotiable, but we'll have that conversation. So for us to be operational, we certainly will have a conversation with all of the employees, yourselves included.
I can see a lot of cost savings in that across the board if you go to that.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Mr. Smith?
Steve, if somebody from the police department becomes chief after July 1st, is that considered being hired after July 1st?
This is Steve Driscoll for the record. In the past, when we have promoted someone from within, we do not consider them being hired by the city. And they typically would drag any benefit that they,
Okay.
in most cases, they would drag benefits, and we do that today.
Okay.
When we say hire, we're typically meaning that someone is coming into the city as a new employee after that date.
Okay. Thank you.
That's our intent.
Any other questions? Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I thank Mr. Smith for asking that question, because I thought it was the other way around. How many of those positions, supervisor positions, do we actually hire from the outside compared to promoting from within?
At this point in the management and the executive resolution specifically, those jobs normally are done through an assessment center process, and it is as likely that someone from the outside would be hired as someone from the inside.
But I don't think we've hired anybody from the outside for 5-6 years on any of those positions, on any supervisory position.
We've brought in several engineers from the outside, and we've brought in new finance directors.
Okay.
So
All right.
I think
All right.
and from this standpoint, Mr. Schmidt, what we could do too is that if it is the pleasure of the council, that with all these agreements, that it is the other way around, that when they promote or are hired from outside into that position, we can make that the clarification and go through. This is a benefit that we are determining on behalf of the employees. So if that's what you'd like, we'll make that interpretation.
Well, I guess it's a catch-22. I mean, it's depending upon what your flavor is. If we're looking for substantial long-term cost reductions, then, as people fill in the positions, you take those, you put in the new language on it. You're probably going to pretty much have nobody go promoted from within, if they've got to start paying 50% of their health care costs, because, they're probably not going to make that much of a difference in the job titles to pay for that. So but I think it does need to be looked at how that is explained, because, we've had a policy to try to promote from within. You mentioned the finance director. We just did the finance director promoted from within and never advertised to the outside world. So, we do that quite often, and if you're going to be looking to try to change a system for long-term cost benefits, you need to be consistent with it, where one department head gets hired from the outside, he's paying something different than a department head that's worked for the city, but just got promoted, last month.
And it would be, from the risk perspective on the funds, it would be preferable to do promoted or hired. That would be preferable, because it will take a long time for us to decrease those costs and to go forward. So hopefully I haven't misspoke on what was represented to you by the manager on those, and if his position was that it was, promoted or hired, that'd be fine. I could have misspoke on that.
I don't believe anybody's talked about this in detail to say exactly. I'm saying I misunderstood. I thought that it was going to be a policy.
I know that would be
Anybody
preferable
else?
from a fiscal perspective, would be for us to move people from the 100% paid to paying a piece, and 50% is reasonable within the current marketplace, and to go from there. So for promote or hire would be a preferable way fiscally.
I guess my question is, what are the people in the resolution, what were their intentions when they brought it forward? I don't want to change their intentions here.
Well, we presented it to them, and the last we talked about it, it was, to my recollection, presented that it would be promoted or hired. I think I probably may have misspoken that it was hired only.
Okay, so.
I think from a fiscal perspective and from your risk manager's perspective, I would like to move people over, more quickly than ever, than long-term to go from there.
I want to make sure that those who, voted and reviewed it, that there's no misunderstanding
This was a
there.
discussion point with them. There's no voting with these
Okay,
people.
all right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So could I clarify for the record then, based on that conversation, that all those that would be promoted or hired after July 1st of 2010 for the 50%?
No.
Dependent. I'll present it that way, and then you can have your conversation from there.
I think we're going to have one right
Unless
now.
Because
someone
I
can give
read
you
it-
some different conversation.
I read it the other way, and my understanding was the intent was to make sure that in this resolution process that we were looking forward, so that any new hires, not promotions, but any new hires would be expected to pay more of their health benefits, because my understanding is we're still waiting for some resolution to come out of the Healthcare Committee where we achieve, and I believe the figure was $400,000 worth of savings from the current employee base in the health benefits. And so my understanding is, as we're waiting for that resolution, we want to make sure that any new employees are set up to be able to take, set up to be cost-effective in the future for the city. But in the meantime, we need our healthcare committee to come to the table and figure out how we can reduce the burden of health benefits on the city fiscally. And that's where that decision will be made in terms of what happens with people who are currently employed by the city. I think we would set up a really unhealthy dynamic if you were looking employees in the eye and saying, okay, you have to choose between a promotion and paying more of your health benefits. I mean, we want good people to move forward through the system. So while I absolutely recognize that we need to do something to reel in the cost of health benefits, and our budget, I believe our approved budget recognized that in accounting, asking the health committee to do that, that's where that's going to happen. So I think it's 50% for new hires only, not new hires and promotees.
Mr. Kerrigan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Steve, I was going to concur with that.
Okay, then that's,
And
when you make your motions, and you can make it.
we'll just
make
leave
that
it the
part.
way it's written.
Higher.
Yeah, but somebody mentioned a two-tiered system. Well, that's what we've been talking about, and that's kind of the inherent danger of a two-tiered system, is that if you do go into something like this, there is going to be somebody that's been here a while making something different than somebody that's newly hired. And there's been a lot of companies in the U.S. that have already done that. And so.
Well, in this case, we'll actually have 3 tiers come July 1st of 2010.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
And that was the reason for my question earlier, so anybody hired after July 1st. And this just goes to prove that, again, Julie and I agree on something. So, thank you. And Mike.
I'm shocked. To me, I think it's hired is good. I mean, these groups are all taking 2 years, 15%, getting hammered pretty well as it is. And they've stepped up to the plate where some others have not. At this rate, I don't see taking more from these particular groups either, so.
We'll
would
apply
be-
that
be my
accordingly
stake.
based on your approval.
All right, any more questions? And we can still have questions as we go through these one at a time, if you have questions on any particular agenda item. So let's go to 6.3. Any questions on 6.3? If not, looking for a motion. Mr. Kerrigan.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve resolution number 3175.
Mr. Smith.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Kerrigan, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve 6.3. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay, 6.4, any discussion on 6.4? Ms. Ratty, do
Move to approve Resolution 3176.
you have a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve 6.4. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 6.5. Ms. Ratty,
Move to approve Resolution 3177.
do you have a second?
Second.
Mr. Salerno. Whoops. Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Salerno. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 6.6, any further discussion? Mr. Smith,
Move to approve the confidential employees resolution 3178 as presented by staff.
you have a second? Mr. Salerno. Moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Councilman Salerno to approve 6.6. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 6.7, any discussion? Looking for a motion. Ms. Ratty,
Move to approve Resolution 3179.
do you have a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve 6.7. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 6.8, any discussion? Looking for a motion? Ms. Ratty,
Move to approve Resolution number 3180.
do you have a second? Mr. Salerno. Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Salerno to approve 6.8 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimously. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Good job. 6.9, presentation, discussion, and possible direction regarding the City of Sparks energy and sustainability projects. And it's Mr. Sustainability himself, Pete Etchard. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Pete Etchart, City Engineer, for the record, and I am here today to talk about some of our energy and sustainability projects and kind of give you an update on where we are and be looking for your direction on one important item. I'll start with some of the, well, we've had a lot of positives and we've had some setbacks and challenges, but one of the positives obviously has been on our photovoltaic projects, and Larry Johnson's a great example of that. Project's up and running. And we have two other projects that are getting very close to that same point at Fire Station 4 and Fire Station 5. They're producing energy now. We're just working with NV Energy to set the meter so we start getting credit for that energy. I want to talk a little bit about our future photovoltaic projects, where we're going next. Police Station Phase 1, which is a 100 kilowatt system in that south secured parking lot. Same with Police Station Phase 2. We want to do another project at Larry Johnson in the parking lot, about 60 kilowatts. The Rec Center gym at 118 Richards, that'd be kind of a ground and probably parking lot mounted. It's about 100 kW. Just to give you a little perspective, the one like at Larry Johnson right now on the roof is about 28 kilowatts. And then we have two projects we want to do at Golden Eagle Regional Park. One for the lighting which would be about 100 kW, and one for the main building, which is a rooftop system, which would be about 30 kilowatts. And that's a real important project to us now, since we have a restaurant going in and we want to start producing energy. The first 5 projects listed there, we've actually submitted for NV Energy solar generation rebates. The only reason the main building at GERP was not submitted was because it was under design. We were using our energy efficiency and conservation block grant money through ARA to actually design that project, and so it wasn't ready to be submitted, unfortunately. And we're just finalizing that design now. I want to talk a little detail about the police station photovoltaic project phase 1. It is our top priority project. Again, it's going to be a pole-mounted system in that secured parking lot to the south of the building. And we're planning on ultimately doing 3 phases of this project. This project was awarded by you, the City Council, on April 12th. It utilizes our ARA stimulus funds, the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant funds, leveraged with NV Energy solar generation rebate funds. The award that was done by you was contingent upon receiving a solar generations rebate reservation letter from NV Energy. Originally, the solar generations rebate application period was going to begin in March. It was delayed until April 21st. On April 21st at noon, it went live, and every agency was submitting applications as fast as they could. The system was set up to be a reservation. We're going to be reserved on a first-in basis. So obviously, it put a lot of pressure on everybody to get these things in as fast as they could. And I thank again the team that we had put in place. Everybody did a fantastic job, and it was nice having IT there because we had significant system-wide computer problems. They weren't on our end, it was actually on NV Energy's end. Their system got overwhelmed, and so everybody crashed. And when we started putting them in, we figured, we timed it, we had practiced, we'd done everything we could do. We figured it would probably take us 5 minutes to get all our applications in. Well, we got our first one in about 12:11, and we got our last one in around 12:30. And actually, you know, we were kind of disappointed by that, but when I talked to everyone else, that was actually really, really good. For instance, I think the city of Reno didn't get their first one in until after 1 o'clock, and Carson City, same thing, around 12:45. So it was taking agencies 45 minutes, an hour to an hour and a half to get their applications in. By their program regulations, they had 30 days to notify us on whether we received a rebate or did not receive a rebate. And so we were all anxiously waiting. We were notified on May 21st, which was 30 days afterwards, about the results. And I'll be honest, it was disheartening because in that 30-day period, they changed all the rules. So the first-in basis was changed to being awarded based on size, with the smallest going first and the largest going last. Well, that was very disheartening, especially to us, since we put in all 100 kilowatt applications, which was the maximum size. And the reason we did that was 4 of the 5 were 100 kilowatts. And the other one, which was going to be a 60 kilowatt system, we put it in 100 because we didn't know which one we were going to get in first. And no matter which one we got in first, we were going to switch it over to being the police department phase 1 because we had federal stimulus funds attached to it. So it was really important that that was the one that we got in first. They also only decided to award the first year, or step 1, at this time. When this came out, and really I didn't know about it until about May 23rd or 4th, they had a Public Utilities Commission meeting on May 27th, which I did attend, and I did testify on behalf of the City of Sparks. City of Reno was there, as well as Clark County and Las Vegas. A lot of contractors also showed up. One of the hard parts of this was all the contractors, including the agencies also, we prioritized based on what was our most important project to get that one in first. So contractors were lined up and had all their people putting them in based on their priority. Well, when they switched and went to a size, obviously a lot of the contractors and agencies got projects that weren't their highest priority, and their highest priority projects, they didn't get a rebate. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that impacts us. Now, NV Energy is trying to figure out what to do, and one of the things they've asked for is they filed a petition to the Public Utilities Commission that they're asking for a waiver that basically would do all applications being submitted in April would be approved. And for what that means to Sparks is all 5 of the 100 kilowatt applications that we submitted would be approved at the initial cost of $5 a watt. And just to back up for a second, we did not receive one under the first phase. We didn't get anything. So if this was approved, this waiver and petition to the PUC, we would get all 5 at $5 a watt. And the rebates would be paid now, what they're proposing, on a first completed basis. Well, this has its own inherent problems because, as you can expect, the owners, including us, would be pounding on the contractors, get mine done first, get mine done first. Because by statute, by legislative statute, they only have so much money they can spend every year. The first year they have 800 kilowatts, basically they can do in rebates. Second year, 900 kW, and the third year would be a megawatt. So it wouldn't be, if they approve this petition the way it's written right now, it's not that you wouldn't get paid, but when would you get paid? And obviously the carrying cost of that money, I think our finance department's going to have a big difference between me telling them we'll get paid in 2011 compared to we'll get our money in 2014.
Pete, we got a question.
Sure.
Mr. Schmidt?
Pete, what were the size of the projects that were awarded?
You know, I don't know all the sizes because it's been really hard to get that information. But I'll give you an example. The city of Reno actually submitted 300 kilowatt applications. And like I said, they didn't get theirs in until after 1 o'clock. Their contractor actually made a slight mistake. And so instead of being 100 kW applications, they went in at 95, and they actually got one. So they got an application at 95 kilowatts where we didn't get one at 100. I don't know all of it. I mean, they've been kind of tight-lipped about the information, so I haven't seen a list that shows actually the size, who got them. All we got was the reservation number, and you had to take that reservation number and then compare it to the ones you submitted to see if you got one or not. Probably the most disheartening part of it is that from the very beginning, the city of Sparks, city of Reno especially, we worked with NV Energy on setting up the rules for this program. And when they made the changes, we were not asked again for any input on it. All of a sudden, it was just, bang, here it is. Here's the new rules after the fact. And they sent the letters out saying, here's the reservation letters. So now it's a done deal. They sent them out, and we have no recourse, except to go to the PUC.
Sounds like NV Energy became a government agency overnight, huh?
Well, it's disheartening, I mean, to say the least. And I did testify to that account at the PUC, as well as, like I said, Reno, Las Vegas, and Clark County. The contractors are kind of in uproar because they can see under these, even if this waiver is granted, that all of a sudden it's tough to run a business when everybody's pounding on you, get mine done first, and for 3 months you're going to be as busy as can be, then the rest of the 9 months you may not have anything. So there are some serious things that need to be addressed. The PUC is scheduled to address this issue specifically on June 30th. Actually, when I went to the PUC and testified, it actually wasn't on the agenda, but the commissioners decided to open it up for public input just to kind of get some, to let the contractors pretty much vent and the agencies, because everybody was pretty upset about it. As I see it, the PUC probably has two options right now, the way it stands. One is to say we're going to start this process of approving the petition filed by NV Energy, and best I can tell, that's going to take several months to work through. Or the second option is they go back to the original step 1, 2, 3, which they originally said they were going to do, to award the first 3 years of contracts. Now, they won't tell anybody if you had one in year 2 or year 3. Now, I kind of demanded to know, and they kind of told us informally that we have one in year 2 and possibly one in year 3, but I have no way of verifying that, and they won't put it in writing. So, and I'd like to, the reason this is so important to us is because the Department of Energy has actually come out with a letter recently making a recommendation and asking all of the agencies to have 90% of your stimulus funds under contract or obligated by June 25th. But we can't go forward until I know what's going on with the rebates, or we'd be giving away $500,000. And so we're kind of under the gun here, and that was really a sensitive issue to the Public Utilities Commission. Their number one thing, they said, is they don't want to impact any agencies from getting their stimulus money. Well, I guess one of my comments is, if that was such a high priority, well, they should have used that in then selecting the projects. So we're going to obviously file for an extension with the Department of Energy. It was a kind of a new requirement the Department of Energy put out on us to have these things encumbered so quickly. So I don't think we'll have a problem, personally, I don't think we'll have a problem getting that extension, but it does kind of put us under the gun. The other thing is that we have other federal grant opportunities that have been sent out that, you know, I'm kind of on hold. I'm waiting because what I wanted to use as our match money was the rebates. So it is tough on us. I received a letter on Friday that was actually sent Friday, but they faxed it to me from NV Energy. And basically what it says is that NV Energy is investigating our stimulus requirements of applicants and rebate incentive needs to move forward with these projects. And they've asked that all the agencies respond back to them by June 17th, saying which of these projects you submitted have stimulus money attached to them. So obviously I'll be sending that letter back to them right away saying this impacts us. And I know Commissioner Wagner is very sensitive to this issue, so I know they're going to be continuing to work on it. And one of the things I would like to recommend is that perhaps the City Council, maybe have the City Manager sign it, send a letter to NV Energy with our concerns on the changes to the program And I'd also make a recommendation that, at the minimum, I believe they should provide a rebate reservation letter based on the old process of step 1, 2, 3, with perhaps a caveat saying that they have petitioned the PUC, or a petition to the PUC has been filed and the changes could occur. But at least if we have that reservation letter in hand, then we could start the project, we could get the Department of Energy happy that we're starting the project. And then if we get the reservation based on the old system, great. If it goes to the new system, great, but at least we're moving forward.
So Pete, can you let us know about the letter when we need to do it? I don't know that there's any problem with anybody on the council that we send a letter to NV Energy with our concerns?
And that was the biggest thing I wanted to ask for your guidance on that particular issue. I would be glad to draft a letter and
Yeah.
get it for your signature.
Okay. Question, Ms. Ratty?
Well, I guess my question, looking either to you, Mayor, or to Mr. Driscoll, is there something that we can do that's even more firm? Because, I've been following this process very closely from the beginning, and this is ridiculous. Basically, the city of Sparks got screwed. I don't know how to say it more lightly than that. And, this is the only way that we have in the current economic environment to move these kinds of projects forward. And, so if there's anything that we can do that is more firm, I would like to see our government affairs folks work with Mr. Etchert to talk to, whatever we need to do with the PUC. I'm wondering if they violated any legislative intent and if we should be getting some of our local legislators involved in the conversation, because, it just is patently unfair, obviously, but it's also not good for the citizens of Washoe County, Reno, Sparks, and I think we need to take a firm stand on this.
I think if anybody has a right to gripe, and I hate to say this, but it's probably the city of Sparks, because I really feel that we went above and beyond what they were looking for. We were probably the only agency, and I'm just speculating here, but the only agency that actually had it under contract. They were approved by you. We were ready to go. A lot of other agencies were using our contract as a joinder to go forward with their projects. And we were one of the first ones in, even with all the computer problems. We were one of the first agencies. We got all 5 of ours in long before most agencies got their first one in. And still, after all that, we didn't get one. So, I don't know another way of phrasing it either. Really, I feel it was inherently unfair. And I think we did kind of get the shaft a little bit here. And I think it is probably worth bringing up. And like I said, it's nothing NV Energy isn't aware of. There was a lot of contractors there that were very upset about the process. And, I know NV Energy is doing their best to try to work through this, and they're just saying, okay, the systems went down, we had all these problems, what do we do now? I just wish they would have asked us to have some input in this instead of all of a sudden changing the rules and coming back and saying, here they are, live with them. That I didn't care for, and also the stimulus funds. Now, I realize I got this letter faxed to me Friday that says, we're sensitive to that too, and we're going to address it, but where's that going? I don't know. That's why I felt it was important to meet with you today and just kind of give you an update.
Well, let's get a letter drafted then and get that going right away, and then we can work on other stuff too, whatever we need to do.
So moving on from that, I'll talk about something a little bit more positive. I won't dwell on these, but these are 4 of the projects we have. They're starting right now. We have the waste oil heater going on at the maintenance facility. We're replacing the LED lights, the yellows, and our traffic signals. And we have 2 projects I think that can really save us a lot of money, which are lighting retrofit projects at both the police department and then citywide. And the one I kind of wanted to highlight is the bottom one, because this is something we're going to roll out that I haven't really discussed with you before, except for the demonstration project we did. If you've seen the lights on the backside of the theater, the Acorn lights, we replaced them probably 6 to 8 months ago with a compact fluorescent rather than the normal lights that were in them before. Significant savings. I don't know the exact number, but it's like we're talking 60, 70% energy savings compared to what the normal lights are. They've worked really well, and so based on that, we'd like to roll that out downtown, all the existing lights. The new lights going in are LEDs, but all the existing lights, until we can afford to replace them, we'd like to change them over to compact fluorescents. The only difference you really see, it's a wider light, and we're putting a shield in the top to kind of direct the light down. Actually, it does dark skies by default, but at the same time, it is producing good light. We feel it would save us probably, like I said, 60% probably in power. The nice part of it is it's about $15,000 for material. It's probably about that equal amount to install them. And the cost payback on this is about 1 year. So, it pays back just in energy costs in about a year, which is, to me, makes total sense to go ahead and do it. And speaking of lights, this is some exciting news. We were notified here a few weeks ago that we actually received a sub-grant award from the state of Nevada for their energy efficiency and conservation block grant money to the sum of $352,000 that will be administered by the RTC. The state money doesn't go directly to the city, so it'll be administered by the RTC. But this will fund the replacement of all 440 intersection streetlights that we have in Sparks. We were originally going to replace about 80 of them with our money, but now we reallocated our money to photovoltaics, and we're going to be able to pay for all of it through the state money. That's important to us because right now we pay about $140,000 a year our electric bill for our intersections. That includes the traffic signals and the streetlights. So by being able to reduce that cost by probably about 40% on the streetlight portion itself, that's a significant savings again. And so that's a savings we get every year. And where we're at in that process right now is we'd already started the streetlight evaluation process in Sparks. We've already completed phase 1, which was getting all the information on pricing, warranty. We asked for illumination plans on a sample intersection. All of that is complete. Now we're going to be doing the phase 2 field testing actually starting tomorrow night. I'm hoping we can get it all done in one night. We're going to be beginning about 9 o'clock, probably have the first lights up around 10 o'clock tomorrow night. And that's going to be, again, at the same intersection we did last time at Lazy 5 and David Allen Parkway. We have 7 different vendor products that we'll be testing tomorrow night. And then once we have that information complete, which is like the light level it puts out, how much energy it draws, ease of installation, quality construction, those factors, then we're going to put it all together, have a recommended product. Reno and Washoe County want to join with us in having one regional product. So we're excited about that and get these installed as fast as we can. And then the last thing I want to discuss with you real quickly, because we're just kind of starting in this process, is a streetlight reduction demonstration project. I've been working with the city manager on this, and this is also really important fiscally for the city of Sparks, because right now we pay about $800,000 a year as our electrical cost for all the streetlights in the city of Sparks. So what we proposed as far as the sustainability committee to the city manager was that we do a sample test area for reducing the amount of streetlights that we have. We're going to do one in each of the council wards, so we have 5 different areas. And what we would do is any street light that's on a curve, an intersection, or at the end of a cul-de-sac would remain, but the mid-block lights would be darkened. And then what we'll do is we'll ask the citizens for about maybe a 3-week period for their comments, and then I'll gather all those comments, bring those back to you, and then you would have the option of saying, yes, we want to go ahead and turn those lights back on because we don't think that worked very well, or yes, let's take the lights out and roll this out citywide, or there may be some other options, such as Colorado Springs, Colorado actually did the same kind of project where they took the lights out and then they did an adopt-a-light program where if a citizen really wanted to have that light on, he could pay the cost of having that light on, $100, $150 a year, whatever, to keep that light on. So that would just be another option that you could have. It's just a way, and we'll see. And I just wanted to get any comments you had on that before we roll this out, if you had any initial comments.
Mr. Smith?
Wouldn't it be a big difference if you did it during daylight saving times or after? Because you're going to get a better effect or a darker effect at 5 o'clock in the afternoon during the winter.
Yeah, the timing's not good, I'm the first to say. Right now, since it's not getting dark till 9 o'clock, we'll probably not get that many comments. If I was doing this in February, you'd probably get more comments. I'd love to wait, but at the same time, if we wait, that's another 6 months. But I can definitely take the direction. If you want to wait, we can wait till winter.
I don't know, I just think it'll be different.
My only concern is that the city manager's budget already had a reduction shown.
I go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. I don't care if they're on after 9 o'clock, but 5 o'clock I'm awake.
That's why we want to do the comments now.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
Any other comments?
Can you do another test in the winter, or do you have to do it all right now?
We're completely open.
I would think 2 tests anyway.
We could do it now. I know we're going to get comments on both sides because I get them now. I've got some people, that we turned them off in the subdivisions where they didn't have any development going on. And as a few houses have been built, we get the calls, I want the street light on. It's important that we have it on. But I also get the call saying, I'm tired of that thing shining in my window. I'm going to shoot out with a BB gun if you don't do something about it and put a shield on it. So I know we're going to get comments on both sides. And a lot of people who live in the county don't have street lights. They like it that way. So we're going to get a mixed bag of results, and it'll be up to you to say, do we want to go forward? I'll give you the cost savings and all the comments that we get, and we'll make a decision.
Well, I guess the direction I would give is to go ahead and do what you're going to do now, and then depending on what comments we get, we may want to run another one in January or February.
Yeah.
Sounds good. With that, I'll answer any other questions. If you
Questions?
have any on anything else?
No questions? Okay, thanks, Pete. Good job. Okay, 6.10, consideration and possible direction to amend Chapter 20.22 of the municipal code to assign to a territory annexed into the city a zoning designation equivalent to the city of Sparks' master plan designation. Mr. Arundel, how are you, sir?
All right. Jim Rundle, Senior Planner, here to move forward with potentially having staff work on a code amendment to amend the annexation ordinance. So a motion today to have staff look into that wouldn't affect the municipal code. But what we're looking at doing is the regional plan currently requires that by the expired settlement agreement, the City of Sparks and City of Reno, when land comes into your sphere of influence, you adopt the equivalent land use designation. So when something comes into your TMSA or sphere of influence, you adopt the equivalent land use designation. Our zoning code also follows that same scenario in that you get a county designation equivalent to a City of Sparks designation. So what we're proposing with this, or what this code amendment may propose, is that we would look into changing the municipal code to have an equivalence, take the Sparks master plan designation and have an equivalent annexation. So upon annexation, instead of you reverting back to the old county designation, you would adopt the Sparks master plan designation and get that designation. That's probably confusing. I'm going to give an example of the East Truckee River Canyon.
Got a question, Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah.
It's probably confusing, and I think you're right. So why don't we go ahead and take and just re-say that, because I think that there's two different things. I am hearing two different things that
Okay.
you're saying, that the regional governing plan says one thing, but we're going to do something differently, is what
Okay.
I'm hearing. So
Let me try to say that again. Currently in the regional plan, when you, by way of the expired settlement agreement, when you take land into your sphere of influence, you have to adopt the former county designation. So if it was designated in the county, a master plan designation in the county, you have to adopt a Sparks industrial designation. But when we go back and do a, let's say in East Truckee River Canyon, an area plan, and we adopt new land use designations, let's say we change that designation from industrial to a business park, and then the applicant comes in and wants to annex, we then have to, upon annexation, zone it upon the county designation from like 1991, as opposed to designating it business park based on the new Sparks land use designation. So what this is kind of proposing is to say, we've remaster planned it, let's use the Sparks master plan designation that the city council approved as the most appropriate designation and zone it appropriately. Therefore, the master plan would be implemented as what the council intended it to be, as opposed to you master plan at business park, and in 1985 it had a general rural county designation on it, and it annexes in as agriculture. So what this would do is essentially implement the Sparks master plan as opposed to implementing the former county master plan.
Yeah. Good. Good, Ron.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so this is where I'm getting confused here, because the agenda item is to match City of Sparks designation to Washoe County designation, correct?
Well, actually, the agenda item is to allow staff to look into proposing a code amendment to do that.
But when you look at policy 1.2.16, number 2, it describes exactly what you said, which is something different, is that it's upon the submitting of the master plan is when you make those changes.
Policy 1.2.
16, item number 2, each city shall submit its master plan for conformance review with the land use determination as policy 1.2.161 upon finding the conformance, take jurisdictions for action covered NRS 278. So, I mean.
You're referring to the regional plan.
Correct.
Okay.
Because the regional plan is the one that is governing this. This is being done by the regional plan, is telling us that we have to, when we do an SOI or an annexation, we match their land designation when we have an SOI.
The regional plan dictates master planning. What we're talking about here is zoning or annexation. So what the regional plan says is when you take land into your sphere of influence, you have to assign a master plan designation equivalent to the county's designation. What we're talking about here is annexation and zoning, and the regional plan does not affect annexation or zoning. So what we're proposing is that what we're asked the council is, what we've been directed to ask the council for is permission to look into proposing a code amendment for zoning, not for master planning. So regional plan dictates master planning. So you take it into your sphere of influence, you have to assign that equivalent designation. Then if you come back and in time you do an area plan and you assign master plan designations, this code amendment, if it went forward and was approved, would say, okay, you've got a new designation of business park or whatever designation you choose. When you want to annex, you should annex in with a business park zoning designation as opposed to annexing in as the former county designation. Currently, the municipal code follows it basically parallels what the regional plan said. But I don't want regional planning affects master planning. This is an amendment to like the zoning code.
Jen, Ron?
Thank you.
Mr. Carey?
Yeah, well, when you look at it that way, first of all, is this going to be cost-effective and streamline it?
In staff's opinion, I believe that this would provide for consistency, and it would also provide for a streamlined process for the development community.
That's what I was going to say, because if a developer comes in and has to go under the designation of the county, don't they have to come through us to now rezone it?
Yes.
Does that cost them money?
Yes.
And so, in other words, if we asked for this, that would cut out that step, correct?
Yes. And the council may remember when we were doing annexations more often, that a substantial portion of those annexations were an annexation request, follow 8.1, 8.2 rezoning requests.
Yep.
Right.
And that was because as soon as they would annex in, maybe they wanted to do general commercial or C2. Well, they'd annex in and they'd have like an A40 zoning designation, which didn't permit them to do anything. So I think that this could further implementation of the master plan that the city council approves and provide for consistency. So, if you put a Sparks land use designation of tourist commercial on the land, that they're going to annex in and have to be zoned tourist commercial. They're not going to get an agriculture zoning or an industrial zoning, depending on a land use plan that the county implemented who knows, 1970 or something like that. So, yeah, the ultimate goal would be provide consistency and remove a potential step for developers.
Questions for Jim? Okay, no further questions. Looking for a motion? Mr. Smith?
Move to direct staff to initiate a code amendment to Title 20.22 to zone territory at the time of annexation based on the adopted City of Sparks Master Plan designation and providing other matters properly relating thereto.
You have a second? Mr. Kerrigan?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Councilman Kerrigan to approve 6.10. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, please vote. Passes 4-1. Mr. Schmidt, no. Okay, 6.11, consideration of possible city council sponsorship of an amendment to the 2007 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan to remove the designation of Emerging Employment Center from the Patrick Interchange to the East Truckee River Canyon. Go ahead, Jim.
Jim Rundle, Senior Planner, here to present a regional plan amendment. In the 2007 regional plan designates the area in the East Truckee River Canyon near the Patrick Interchange on Interstate 80 as an emerging employment center. This is a map of the city of Sparks sphere of influence, and so East Truckee River Canyon, so the Patrick Interchange is in that area approximately. The requirement in the regional plan for an emerging employment center is that the local master plan provide for adequate residential, pedestrian connections throughout the area, a plan for transit service to that area, and required design and intensity standards to maintain the character of a residential area. We are working, as the council is aware, of a master plan for the East Truckee River Canyon. Recent analysis reflects residential may not be the most appropriate land use for the East Truckee Canyon. The motion is to sponsor an amendment to remove the Patrick Interchange as an emerging employment center in the regional plan. It may be the desire of the city council or property owners to include residential in the East Truckee River Canyon at some point. Removing the Patrick Interchange as an emerging employment center in the regional plan allows the city of Sparks the flexibility to decide for the city of Sparks what the most appropriate land use designations are. If residential at some point or now is the appropriate land use, the city of Sparks City Council and Planning Commission can approve that land use. If the council decides that residential is not the most appropriate land use in the canyon, we don't include residential in the master plan for the canyon. But it leaves, removing this requirement leaves that decision up to the city of Sparks as opposed to it being dictated in the regional plan. And that concludes my presentation.
Questions for Mr. Rundle? Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jim, in the 2001-2004 fiasco with the regional plan update, there was lawsuits. I think we had about $3 million we invested in lawyers to try to reach an agreement with that particular lawsuit. One of those items that we were very passionate about was, and also was to reach an agreement settlement. That was one of the things that Washington County and Reno was very happy with, that we did, emerging employment centers. Things have changed. Tell me what planning principle has changed that we would now say we don't want to do this?
Well, the requirement for emerging employment center by the regional plan is that your local master plan require for substantial amounts of residential and transit service, and to implement a residential character to that area. And what we're finding in fiscal analysis and other types of analysis, infrastructure analysis for the East Truckee River Canyon, is that residential may not be the most appropriate land use right now. And I understand, like you're saying, 2002 or 2004, whichever year, that the city of Sparks and the regional plan thought that residential was an appropriate use. And so, let's say 10 years from now, or what would that be, 6 years from now, we discover that residential is the most appropriate use for the canyon. Removing the requirement by the regional plan to have it allows Sparks the flexibility, in staff's opinion, to decide what the most appropriate land use is for the canyon. If it is residential, we can research it and make a proposal. If it's not residential, we can research it and make a proposal, but it will be because the Sparks City Council or the Sparks Planning Commission proposes something, or property owners, as opposed to the regional plan dictating what we have to do in that area.
And my concern is that, staff was very passionate about this item, 5 years ago. Very passionate that, this is correct planning, this is the right thing to do. We went through NDOT issues, we went through RTC issues, this was not something that was just done at 10 minutes at a council meeting. This was years worth of work to identify why we were doing this. And I'm asking a very simple question, is what planning principles have changed that says that we should not have residential in a high employment area, which, 15 miles down the canyon? I mean, have we talked to NDOT? Have we talked to RTC? Have we gone through the same public process that we went through to reach this conclusion in 2005, 2004? Have we gone through that same process? Or are we here in 10 minutes at a council meeting saying, yeah, let's just get rid of residential because somewhere out there, somebody might have a report or might not have a report, because nobody's produced that report to me that says that it's not fiscally feasible. I'm looking for the planning principle and not the marketing principle, because that's what this whole thing is based upon. You're changing this designation based upon a marketing issue. Residential is not popular right now, so we go ahead and we do it all into industrial, business, whatever you want to do. 2-3 years from now, residential gets popular again. Well, let's go back and put you're doing market-based planning and not principle-based planning. And so tell me what principles have changed that says this is the thing to do now.
Well, the first thing, Councilman Schmidt, is we're not assigning any land use designation to this land. What we're doing with this amendment proposing with this amendment to the regional plan is providing the City of Sparks City Council the ability to decide what the most appropriate land use designation is, as opposed to the regional plan dictating to the City of Sparks what the most appropriate regional planning or most appropriate master plan designation is.
You have to remember the City of Sparks asked for that. It wasn't the regional governing board that says you will do this. It was the City of Sparks that says we want to do this, based upon all these issues.
And what that has now been done is been put into contract that the City of Sparks will, and we're trying to go back to that perspective of what the City of Sparks wants to do should be up to the City of Sparks, as opposed to the regional planning governing board.
So that's the principle that we're going to hang our hat on, is that we want to maintain control. Even though we asked for this, we want to maintain control, to be flexible, come and go as we want to go with what we want to do with the property.
Well, I don't think that we come and go with any of the, staff doesn't come and go with any of the designations or projects that are proposed to staff. And we have had we have been fortunate recently in the case of the East Truckee River Canyon to have enough money to contract for fiscal impacts, which are very important, to staff, to the city council, to consider those types of impacts. And I'm not sure if we had that ability to do that in 2004.
Well, I'm going to oppose it for basically one reason, is that this spent 3 years, a whole lot of public input, judges, attorneys, all kinds of things to be able to come up with what was the right thing to do. We made developers spend money to come up with plans to match what we wanted them to do, and now we're saying that, well, we changed our mind. So with no public input, with no decision we haven't even run this by our planning commission to understand. Our planning commission hasn't even looked at this. We're going to be sitting here as a council saying, change all this now.
Well, Jim, Mr. Schmidt, members of the council, Armando and else, what I would suggest to you is that in terms of the planning principle, I think what was being looked at the time was a full-fledged community in the East Truckee Canyon that included all of those uses. I think there's certainly been enough that's occurred over the last several years to raise the question of whether that is in fact what should occur out in the East Truckee Canyon. And in fact, this decision to sponsor this amendment does, as Mr. Rundle has suggested, does not preclude the City of Sparks with moving forward with that sort of vision for the canyon. What it does do, and in fact what will occur is as we go through the master planning process, the planning commission hearings, the city council hearings, ultimately a review by the regional planning commission and the regional planning governing board as to the conformance of this master plan with the regional plan, will be exactly what you've suggested, that full-fledged debate. But again, we're looking now to basically move forward with an amendment that would eliminate the requirement that the canyon be developed in that manner. Without this,
Who's paying for all the studies right now in the Patrick area for the master plan and coming, bringing forward to us and telling us to change this? Who's paying for all that?
Well, for this region, for what we're discussing right now, no, there's nobody paying for.
We're trying to change the designation of Patrick Interchange. We didn't wake up one night and say we need to change this. What's the story here about how we're wanting to change this intersection and why?
Well, in the original draft East Truckee River Canyon Area Plan that included residential was never approved. So today's item to remove the Patrick Interchange as an emerging employment center does not change any land use designation. The only land use designation by the city of Sparks that was ever assigned in the East Truckee River Canyon was the former Washoe County designation.
Is someone developing a master plan for this area right now?
We are.
Who's doing it?
Staff.
We're paying for it?
No, well, we are developing the master plan. There was contracts that the City Sparks Council approved to help us with analysis on the East Truckee Canyon.
And who's paying for that?
That was paid by property owners in the canyon.
So the property owners are bringing forward a new master plan that doesn't have housing in it.
The property owners propose land uses to the city staff. Staff analyzes those land uses and is trying to determine based on the support that we're receiving from contractors. And by contractors, I mean the fiscal analysis contractors, the sewer contractors, whether or not those are appropriate land use proposals. It is no different than if a applicant came in northeast part of Sparks and requested a master plan land use change. They can request anything that they would like to request, but staff analyzes that in the best interests of the city and the findings that are required in the state law. So those are the things that we are analyzing right now with the support of our contracts.
Well, I just got to say, the developers were in my office this morning, and they're shocked. They told me it was 10 days ago that somebody notified them that what they had proposed to be done was they had to get a master plan amendment changed to do it. They said 10 days ago, somebody finally notified them that the plan that they started on in November was not going to fly. They were never laid out the requirements that, this was a residential area to be done. They had to include it in it. Now, you guys need to deal with that with the developer. I don't need to deal. I'm telling you, they were sat at my desk this morning down here in the basement and said, we're shocked. No one ever said that this was an issue or a problem. They weren't even aware it was on the agenda 2 months ago and was pulled and asked for discussion to be done about it.
What staff has informed the property owners is that if we move ultimately forward with a East Truckee master plan that does not include a residential component, that plan more than likely would not meet the conformance standard or would not be found in conformance with the regional plan. So if in fact there is going to be a East Truckee River Canyon master plan that does not include residential, and that again remains to be seen. We will be bringing that draft plan forward through the Sparks Planning Commission, Sparks City Council. If that master plan is to be found in conformance with the regional plan as the regional plan now stands, then it would have to have a residential component. This request that the City Council sponsor an amendment simply removes that EEC designation from that Patrick interchange, and then the plan can move forward through the process, if in fact it doesn't include residential component. So.
Okay, other questions? Mr. Smith?
The Emerging Employment Center designation has a residential component to it. We have all these components, and one of them is residential, correct? And we've been talking about this for quite a while now. And it doesn't seem feasible, economically feasible, to do this right now. It doesn't make any sense. We'd have to supply services and everything, which we can't do right now. So that's why this, as far as I know, that's why this is on here to change this. We can pull out the residential now, and at any time in the future, put it back in. When economic times are better, or if we get some employment out there and it's time to put residential. So
Yes.
I think this is just giving us more latitude.
Ultimately with this, if we went through regional planning and was approved and removed from the regional plan, In staff's opinion, this provides the city of Sparks, the city of Sparks Council, to determine the most appropriate land uses at and when they're proposed, as opposed to the regional plan dictating that Sparks will do this.
And we can change this plan anytime.
Well, 4 times a year and as many times as we would want to.
Thank you.
This won't be the last time we'll see this.
No.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, when we talked about the Emergent Employment Center out there, I wasn't too charged up with it because I didn't like the plan anyway because I thought it was too far away from Sparks. So I'll put that on the record. The second thing is, just because somebody pays for a master plan doesn't mean they get what they want. And that was one of the problems we had when we actually were going to do it this way, is there was a couple of people on the city council that said, I don't like the idea of having somebody pay for a master plan because this exactly is what's going to happen, and it is. Okay, where somebody's saying, we're paying for it and we don't want it this way. But that being said, what we're trying to do is just take it out of the hands of regional. But when you go for, let's just go for the process. If we ask for to sponsor an amendment, where does that go from here? What do we have to do?
It would go to regional planning staff and they would propose it to the regional planning commission. And then ultimately, it would go to governing board.
Okay. Do we have anybody on the regional planning commission from our planning commission?
Yes.
Okay.
3 people.
Three.
What's that? We
A
have
third,
3 people.
yes.
Okay, so we have 3. So that'll cover that as far as the planning commission. Okay? And if, in 2002, things have changed. I think it should be in our hands as far as, because it may be viable to put some housing out there. I don't know.
Right.
But let's take a look at it. But what I have a problem with is I don't want the regional plan to tell us, as a city of Sparks, that what we have to do, because when you talk about an emergent employment center, there are a lot of things wrapped up into that, including transportation, bus transportation, housing, and a lot of other things, so.
Ms. Reddy?
I would just say, in terms of getting back to the planning principles, because I do think it's important that the plan not wave back and forth based on the market. But that said, I think that it's not surprising to me that it's difficult to plan, and that reasonable people might disagree, including members of the public, planning commission, members of this council, on whether or not it makes the most sense to develop the East Truckee River Canyon as a full-fledged community with all of the services available to anybody who lives out there, or as a place where there's just some employment and folks are commuting out, because it is so disconnected from the city. And I also believe that starting a new public process by going through this, which is what I heard you say, that we're going to end up having with our East Truckee River Master Plan process, many more public meetings, much more public debate, after we've seen the reality of what happened with the housing boom, which is unsustainable. I mean, that's new information that I think it would be helpful to rehab that debate. And so I'm supporting this because I think it's important to have it in our hands, and I think moving the East Truckee Master Plan along so that we can have a public debate about what's the best thing for the city of Sparks in terms of out in the East Truckee River Canyon makes a lot of sense.
I support it too because it puts it in our hands, I think, is the most important thing, and we should be in charge of what we're doing in our sphere of influence and things. And, I don't know that it's wrong to go back and forth to what the market says we need to do. I mean, as long as it's something good and beneficial to the city, whether it's an emergent center, employment center, or whether it's housing or whether it's not housing, whatever's in that particular time, if it's good for the city, to me, it's fine. But I think bottom line flexibility is the most.
And put it in the Sparks Council's hand.
Exactly.
And mayor's hands.
Exactly.
And if I may, and
Go ahead.
I guess to Councilman Schmidt's point, to the extent that there are concerns on the part of the county or Reno about the change to the regional plan, well then, presumably they would make those concerns heard at the RPC and the RPGB level.
Okay, other questions? If not, looking for a motion. Mr. Smith?
Move that the city of Sparks sponsor a regional plan amendment to remove the Patrick Interchange as an emerging employment center.
Mr. Salerno?
I'll second that.
It's moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Councilman Salerno to approve 6.1. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes 4-1. Mr. Schmidt, no. Okay. Okay, 6.12, consideration and possible direction to initiate a code amendment to create a CC, Canyon Commercial Zoning Designation. Mr. Rendell.
Jim Rundle, Senior Planner, here to move forward with requesting staff to research a Canyon Commercial Zoning Designation. There has been talk from the property owners in the East Truckee River Canyon of potentially doing a use such as a truck stop. With a truck stop, typically the components include a hotel or a motel and a casino portion, as well as retail. Those uses are typically unrestricted gaming. The only use or the only zoning that allows that currently is tourist commercial. As we've discussed already this afternoon, staff is reviewing fiscal analysis that are taking place in the East Truckee River Canyon, and it may not be the most appropriate use to do residential out in the canyon at this time. However, the only designation that would allow for the hotel, casino, or unrestricted gaming and a truck stop is tourist commercial. This would allow the city to allow such a use, which is probably appropriate in the East Truckee River Canyon, but not compromise the fiscal concerns that we have of allowing residential on the property. An example would be someone comes in, does a special use permit, annexes, and gets a tourist commercial zoning designation, and they're in the city of Sparks, with a fiscal analysis as required in the annexation process to do a truck stop, unrestricted gaming, hotel, and commercial. That would show very well in a fiscal analysis. For whatever reasons, the project never moves forward. And in time they sell the property, now someone does residential on it because it's an allowed use in that zoning district. And then the city would have to provide the services for it and probably not be able to, in today's time, recover the costs that are necessary for the residential use. So what we're proposing here is limiting the uses that are allowed in the Canyon Commercial designation.
Questions, Mr. Kerrigan?
Okay, now we'll go on the shoes on the other foot here, talking about tourist commercial, right? Because now what you really want to do is stop residential out there. So my question for tourist commercial is, just because it says there's residential allowed, does that mean that we have to give them that designation? Not we have to let them put housing out there?
No, we don't have.
Okay.
We do not have to allow them to put residential and tourist commercial. I believe it's by special use permit, but I'd have to verify.
Okay, you better, because the same argument you used on why I bought off on the last one is the same reason why I'm going to say we don't need a Canyon commercial.
Okay. I'd like to look at the municipal code, because residential may be by special use permit, it may be by right, and I can't remember right now.
Well, if it's by right, then we have a different problem.
Yes.
If it isn't, I don't think it is, though. If I'm,
Can you
can you find that answer out?
Come back after 8-2.
Okay.
Sure. So while we're at it, is there any other questions on this particular item? Mr. Salerno?
Tourist commercial goes all the way, all the way to the end of our sphere? Okay.
But currently,
Where are we designated?
I'm not sure I understand, Councilman Salerno.
How far does tourist commercial go? All the way to that East Canyon?
Where could we assign tourist commercial zoning? We could assign it anywhere in the East Truckee River Canyon.
They can put it anywhere they want.
That was my question. It
Okay.
does, we can't.
We gotta find
We
out
could
if
assign,
residential's
yes.
a right or not.
Okay, any other questions on 6.12? Okay, we'll move on to the next item and then come back to this after 8.2. Okay, 6.13 is a first reading.
Bill number 2619, an ordinance amending the Sparks Municipal Code relating to general gatherings of people and parades and special events concerning promotional, athletic, musical, historical, and other celebrations, observances, and activities that do not constitute expressive speech which occupy any part of a street or other city property and which hinders the general public in the ordinary and usual use of such street or public property, on public property, clarifying certain provisions and other matters properly relating thereto.
This is the first reading of Bill number 2619. The public hearing and second reading of this bill will be conducted at the regular city council meeting of Monday, June 24th, 2010. 6.14 is the first reading.
Bill number 2620, an ordinance amending Title 12 of the Sparks Municipal Code, repealing chapters 12.40 and 12.41 of the Sparks Municipal Code, adding a chapter entitled Telecommunications and Video Services to require the payment of a franchise fee pursuant to NRS 711.670 for the privilege of providing video service through a video service network that occupies or uses in whole or in part any public right-of-way or highway within the jurisdiction of the City of Sparks and other matters properly related thereto, and providing other matters properly related thereto.
This is the first reading of Bill number 2620. The public hearing and second reading of this bill will be conducted at the regular City Council meeting of Monday, June 24th, 2010. Moving on to 6.15, consideration and possible approval of resolution number 3183, a resolution in support of general aviation in Nevada. Who's doing this, Mr. Driscoll? That's a good question. That's why I asked it.
Mr. Smith.
Well, I'm the one who brought it up. All I'm doing is looking for the council to support this, I guess MOU, if you want to call it that. It's just a letter saying that we support general aviation at our airports. That's all. And that this is the same thing the county is looking at and the city of Reno.
Questions, Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no problem dedicating support to general aviation, as someone who flies myself. My only question is that this is something that's between the airport authority and the general aviation community and stuff. And we've heard from the general aviation community, but we haven't heard from the airport authority other than sporadic emails and things we've had. And we've got two representatives on the airport authority board. Would we be wise to invite them to come on in and give their understanding of the situation and kind of maybe clear up some of the stuff that's going on out there before we do this? I have no problem supporting it because I think we're supporting businesses and taxpayers and the community that generate revenue and jobs. I just want to make sure we've got all of our facts clear first.
And I have met with them, Mr. Schmidt. I can ask him to come before the council if you'd like.
Mr. Addy?
I guess I have a slightly different take. I guess my first question is there anything in this resolution that specifically supports the position of one or more stakeholders in the debate that's going on before the airport board? Because to me, it just says, we support general aviation, we think that general aviation is a positive thing for our community, but we're not necessarily going that step farther and saying we think, and therefore we think the airport board of directors should do this.
No,
So-
it doesn't say anything like that. The airport can do whatever they want to,
Right.
basically. The facts are that we do lose tax base when we do not have the operators at the airport or in Washoe County. If they go down to Carson City because they don't have space at our airport, or instead, we lose that 1% of whatever that plane, the value of that plane is. And that could be pretty extensive. That's a lot of money that we're losing. Now, there are over 400 private pilots in this area. Not all of them have their planes registered here because of that. But I think that just to support the fact of general aviation, which the airport does, that's all we're doing is saying we support it, we want to see it continue, and it's vital.
So I guess that said, I'm reluctant to invite the airport here to give their side of the story because I think there's a proper venue for all that to happen, and that is at the board of directors meetings of the airport. We have two representatives on that board, and so I don't see a reason for us to get in the middle of that. I mean, I'm perfectly happy supporting something that says the GA is good for the community. I have some background in working with general aviation, airport managers, and pilot associations as well. But as long as we're not taking sides necessarily on a very specific position in terms of a debate that's had a lot of public hearings that we haven't been privy to.
We are taking sides as far as we're supporting general aviation. If you don't support general aviation, I guess you'd vote no against it.
Well, I think I agree with your statement that the airport authority also supports general aviation.
Right.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Yeah, and I just want to, I think that everything's, all the whereases are okay, but now when you get to the therefore be it resolved, the only verb in there is we're encouraging the airport authority to continue providing the facilities. Okay? Now, what the airport authority will say to you is they are providing the facilities, but it's only going to cost whoever it is 3 times more, or whatever it may be. So in my book, we're not getting into the middle of that, because that's between the airport and general aviation owners and whoever's running the FBO. But to me, the word encourage, I think, for me, that means that we're just encouraging them to continue providing adequate. And I think, to help Julia, I don't think we're falling down on either side with the word encourage. So that's how I read it.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, looking for a motion.
Go ahead, Gary.
Go ahead, Mike.
You want to make your motion? Or?
No, you can do it.
I got Mr.
Oh, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
Mr. Salerno.
Move to approve resolution, memorandum,
3183.
3183. Consideration, let's see, I want to approve resolution number 3183, a resolution in support of the general aviation in Nevada.
Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Moved by Councilman Salerno, seconded by Councilman Kerrigan to approve resolution number 3183. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay, public hearings. 7.1, public hearing discussion and possible approval of a memorandum of understanding between the City of Sparks and the International Association of Firefighters, Local 1265. Mr. Driscoll.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Steve Driscoll, Assistant City Manager. For the record, as the council's aware, we've had some ongoing conversations with the different bargaining units with the city for the specific purpose of trying to reconcile our budgets. And because of those conversations, there's been a lot of discussion on collective bargaining agreements and changes that were necessary to help resolve those issues. We've had long and productive conversations with the International Association of Firefighters, Local 1265, and what you have before you is a memorandum of understanding that amends and modifies the current collective bargaining agreement with this organization. And let me go over the specific issues that are in the memorandum that you have in front of you. The memorandum will be for the period of July 1st, 2010 to June 30th of 2011. It permanently eliminates two cost of living adjustments, one that would have been 2.1% effective June 30th, 2010, and one that would be 2.1% effective July 1st of 2011. Also in the agreement, IFF would permanently eliminate the uniform allowance that are provided its members currently. Also, all the members of the bargaining unit would permanently reduce their current pay schedule by 2.3%. As part of the 2.1 and the 2.1 cost of living, it doesn't work out, you don't add those together to get to 4.2. It actually works out to a 3.16 number. So for just this current fiscal year, from July 1st of 2010 to June 30th of 2011, the group also agreed to reduce their salaries by 1.05%, which is the economic effect as if the 4.2 was in effect for the entire fiscal year. So that point would come in for this year to balance that out, and then at June 30th, that 1.05% would go back in to the pay rates. Additionally, the city agreed with the holiday comp time and compensatory time banks that the employees have currently, that when we do this adjustment, that we would increase the conversion by 2.3% to take into effect the salary reductions that they're losing, so that it has a zero effect economically converting old money to new money after this agreement, which we think is very fair. The city also agrees to reinstate the 4 firefighters that were laid off as part of your budget reconciliations of April 26th, and there were a second set of firefighters set for the future, and then what this agreement would do, would say that we would not do that, and we would not do any other layoff reductions about the budget for the fiscal year July 1st, 2010 through June 30th of 2011. There's been several questions, and I just want to make sure that we kind of understand, because there's a lot going on here. We will be in negotiations with Local 1265 beginning sometime around February of next year. When those negotiations start, based on what is presented here, you would have where we are today, currently, it would be reduced by the 2.3%, and that would be the starting position for the salary lines for the next fiscal negotiation cycle. And in addition, the uniform allowance would have been gone, so that benefit would no longer be a benefit in the agreement going forward. That would then put your negotiation team and the negotiation team from 1265, starting next year, that would be their starting point for discussions for future negotiations for future agreements between the city and the local. So with that, I'm prepared to answer questions.
Questions for Mr. Driscoll? Mr. Smith?
Steve, the last point there, the city agrees not to lay off any additional members of Local 1265 during FY11. We've already reinstated the four firefighters that were laid off,
We will based on this MOU.
so they haven't been reinstated as of yet.
Did we put
Yeah,
them
they-
back in? Yes,
They've
we
been
did.
reinstated. And we were scheduled to lay off 7 more or 11 more?
There would have been 7 more after the wildfire season, and that's been reinstated as well. So for a total of 11 after that second layoff. In this case, none of those would take place.
Okay, so they won't be laid off. So the city management is pretty confident we will not have to lay off any firefighters for the rest of the year because it's in the agreement now.
We believe, based on the fiscal analysis that was done and the conversation that we've had with 1265, bringing these permanent reductions forward, that we will be able to get through the fiscal year 2000, starting 2010, going to June 30th of 2011, with not requiring any more layoffs with this bargaining unit.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve, outside of having a 2-year agreement, has there anything that we've asked for, the fire department not done?
Well, there's been lots of conversation back and forth, but this resolution, this memorandum that we have here, really is the high points that were necessary to reconcile the budget as presented to you and discussed over the last 6 months. And they were the main things that the bargaining association was able to come to and was willing to bring forward on a permanent basis. So while there were lots of other things discussed by both sides, this is the final resolution of coming to a consensus on how to reconcile the budget that was agreeable to both sides.
In my mind, this is everything that the council's talked about. I mean, I don't recall anything else that we've talked about.
It's in the
I
full spirit
agree.
of what you've been asking for the last 6 months, yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Smith that I wasn't aware that we agreed to not to do any more layoffs, but if everybody feels comfortable with that, I have no problem to continue, doing with that. I just think that, this agreement has encompassed everything we talked about, it encompasses everything we put in the budget, and I say, thank you. I mean, this is, one of the bargaining units come forward and brought everything forward that we've asked for, so.
We've been very fortunate. We've had a lot of conversations, and we haven't always agreed on all the issues and all the timing, but the end resolution, I believe, is a good working relationship between the local and the city. I think it accomplishes the goals, and I think that the local is to be commended for the amount of work that they did, especially the fiscal analysis that they worked with us to understand the details and to educate their entire unit. And then that unit then voted and brought this forward, so I believe this is a good consensus, and I believe this is, shows a good working relationship between the local and the city.
And I don't mind, since it encompasses everything, to go ahead and make a motion to approve the
Personally,
memorandum of understanding.
We've got a public hearing.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Smith?
And I would just like to add what you said, Steve. I want to thank the fire department for the negotiations, and we got through this thing, and we'll be better for it. So thank you for everything.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'll open up to the public. Anyone want to speak under public hearings? I do have one. Kevin Kavanaugh, you have 3 minutes. Anyone else that wish to speak, please fill out a card.
For the record, Kevin Kavanaugh, President, Local 1265. I'd like to thank the city for working with us towards this goal, and I'd like to thank the council for dealing with the process as it happened. And I would like to challenge the council also to sticking to their word and holding to the agreements that, or the proposals they put out there, the requirements they put out there for everybody to cut 7.5%. This was a true 7.5%. We didn't ask for any kickbacks, any raises in our longevities or anything. We had a closed contract. We worked very hard towards this. We educated ourselves on the budget, and we are just asking that this council be very consistent and have the credibility to move forward with requiring this from everybody. And if you have any questions for me.
Questions? Okay, thanks. Anyone else under public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for action or questions. Questions for Mr. Driscoll? If not, looking for a motion. Mr. Schmidt?
Continue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the memorandum of understanding between the IAFF, Local 1265, and the city.
Have a second? Ms. Ratty?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Schmidt, seconded by Councilwoman Ratty to approve agenda item 6.1, memorandum of understanding. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimously. Thanks, Steve. Planning and zoning, 8.1 PCN 10006, public hearing, consideration, and possible action on resolution number 3181, a master plan amendment request. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon. For the record, Tim Thompson, Senior Planner. Before you today is a request for certification of a master plan amendment from Red Hawk Land Company for some property located out in the Wingfield Springs Plan Development. Up on the overhead, kind of skewed, isn't it? Up on the overhead, the area in question is located here. This is Vista Boulevard, and this is the intersection of Vista and Wingfield Hills Road. The proposal is to change two areas from open space to general commercial. The Wingfield Springs handbook currently allows for some commercial uses. However, this area in the handbook has not been designated for this type of use. So Red Hawk would have to come back and amend their handbook to change their maps to allow the general commercial to be located at this particular location. When the application was originally submitted, staff had identified a fairly significant concern of ours being access to the property, considering the fact that it's on a bend, considering we've got the Vista Way or Vista Boulevard improvements going on, and did not want to have any additional left turn movements, again, particularly at the bend in the road. So the applicant did do some additional studies. They did find that at least in their belief, that they could develop these sites with right-in, right-out turn movements only, and acceleration and deceleration lanes. Staff does believe that this is an appropriate location for the general commercial. We do believe that it meets the locational criteria in the Sparks Master Plan, and we are recommending that the council certify this request. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Thompson? Mr. Kerrigan?
Yeah, I only had two questions. You answered one of them from some people that live out there talking about right in and right out. They were hoping there wasn't going to be any left-hand turns across Vista. You already answered that. The other question was, if we change open space into general commercial, how does that go with the percentage of open space?
The analysis shows that the Wingfield Springs Plan Development overall still has more than the 20% open space that they would be required to have.
Okay, so it was 20%, and I think according to what I read, it was at 34%. Is that right?
Yeah, it'll be over 30%.
Okay, so it still meets the criteria.
Correct.
Okay, and they still have to come back in, even though we change it, if we just change the designation, they still have to come back in and plan it, correct?
Correct. They still have to come in and amend their handbook, change the maps.
And also well, I guess if you go general commercial, they're going to...
Yeah, the Wingfield Springs handbook already includes some commercial designations, which
Right.
has a list of land use designations, and in fact...
And all what uses can be on the general commercial, right?
Correct.
Okay, and those won't change?
No.
Okay.
Not unless they propose to change those with an amendment. They certainly could do that.
Yeah, but they have to come back in for an amendment?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks.
Questions? Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'll open the hearing to the public. Anyone want to speak? Sure. Come on up, just give your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Andy Derling with Wood Rogers representing Red Hawk Land Company. We're in agreement with staff and Planning Commission's recommendation. And just to address Councilman Kerrigan's question about the access, we did go through the due diligence to look at the right turn, right in, right out access to both parcels only. There would be a median on Vista Boulevard. We met with RTC, and although from their spacing criteria it could warrant a left turn movement, everybody agreed that it was probably most appropriate just to limit it to right in, right out, and that's what study we went forward with.
Questions, Mr. Silver?
There was going to be some type of median down there so they can't.
Yep, there would be.
All right, anyone else in the public want to speak to this particular agenda item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council for action. Gary.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 3181 certifying the master plan amendment associated with PCN 10006, adopting findings MP1 through MP4 and the facts supporting those findings as set forth in the report.
Mr. Salerno.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Kerrigan, seconded by Councilman Salerno to approve agenda item 8.1, PCN 10006. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Mr. Thompson, 8.2, PCN 10009, public hearing, consideration, and possible action on resolution number 3182, a master plan amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, for the record, Tim Thompson, Senior Planner. This is a request again from Red Hawk Land Company for certification of a master plan amendment for the Tierra del Sol plan development. Currently, the property in question is the purple area here, which is currently designated as 4 dwelling units to the acre. It's located directly south of the proposed casino on the Pyramid Highway, the Lazy 8 project. What the applicant is proposing to do is to change that area. It's about, we got 2.5 acres to public facility and general commercial. The site right now is dedicated right-of-way for a cul-de-sac, 8 residential lots, and a common area parcel. Those lines would have to be reverted. It's also important to point out that through a previous entitlement and the subsequent litigation, that the developer for the Lazy 8 Casino was required to construct for the city a 4,800 square foot public facility. So the reason for the public facility is to accommodate that requirement pursuant to the settlement agreement and the litigation that took place. 4,800 square foot facility with associated parking, the developer didn't believe would require the full 2.5 acres. And so they're proposing to do general commercial on the remainder of that area. Again, when this application first came in, staff was very concerned about the general commercial land use and the intensity of that. Staff's belief at the time was that office professional was probably the most appropriate land use in this particular area. However, with the impending comprehensive plan update, essentially we would no longer have a single office-type land use designation. Any property that was master planned office professional today would be converted to either a commercial or a mixed-use land use in the future. And so rather than move forward with office professional and have it converted to general commercial anyway and give the impression that we might be trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes, we figured it was important to come forward, be straightforward, forward and propose general commercial land use. Again, in this particular case, the applicant would have to amend their handbook to do any kind of commercial or office development on that 1.7 acres. And that would be the most appropriate time to look at the mix of uses that they would be proposing, and any requirements or standards that the city felt was appropriate for any development of that particular area. So while this is a master plan amendment, we cannot condition this. The zoning is really the most appropriate time to deal with some of those concerns, and we'll certainly do that when a handbook amendment is proposed for Tierra del Sol. Again, the Planning Commission and staff has recommended approval, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Thompson? Okay, seeing none, this is a public hearing item. I'm open the public hearing and see if anyone wants to speak under this. Go ahead, applicant.
Thank you again. Andy Durling with Wood Rogers, representing Red Hawk Land Company. We're in agreements with staff and Planning Commission's recommendations, and I'd be happy to answer any questions on their behalf.
Questions for Andy? Anyone else in the audience like to speak to this particular item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for action. Mr. Kerrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be abstaining on this.
Mr. Salerno.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll be abstaining on this item.
Okay, looking for a motion. Mr. Smith.
Well, let me get there now. I thought that was, sorry. Move to approve Resolution 3182 as outlined by staff.
Do you have a second? Mr. Schmidt.
Second.
It's moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Councilman Schmidt. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes 3-0 with 2 abstentions. Okay. Thank you.
612. Did you find that? Did they find the answer out?
What's that?
Back to 612.
Okay, let's move back to 6.12, is that what it was?
612, yes.
6.12, consider impossible direction to initiate a code amendment to create a CC Canyon commercial zoning designation. Go ahead.
Mayor Martini, members of the council, Armando Ornelas, city planner. I think the question was from Councilman Kerrigan. Yes, in the TC zoning, to do residential would require a special use permit, which would be reviewed by the Planning Commission and then only by the City Council if it was appealed or if the council chose to see it. So, you know, I think, again, just to review what this item is, it's basically direction to staff to work on this. You know, if in fact the decision is made through the master planning process not to allow residential uses out there, then the thinking was that the best way to assure that there is no residential is to remove the residential uses from the zoning designations that would be utilized in the canyon. If, however, the city council doesn't want us to work on this at this point, there are potentially other ways to address this through policies in the master plan, or by doing this at a later date if in fact you know, you want to hold off until that decision about residential in the canyon is made through the master planning process. So.
Okay, questions for Mr. Rundle or for Mr. Ornelas?
I'll just go.
Go ahead.
This is just a new designation, right, the commercial? It's replacing the emerging?
This wouldn't replace anything.
It replaces tourist commercial?
It wouldn't replace tourist commercial, it would be in addition to tourist commercial. And it would just be, it's not to say tourist commercial wouldn't be allowed out in the canyon as well, or both, or one, or the other. This was just, this is a request to allow us to look into that, to, as things play out, it allows us to be expedient with processing of plans and zoning codes.
Questions, Mr. Kerrigan?
Yeah, at this time, I don't think we should look for it. I mean, I'm not going to support that if anybody does make that motion, because I think there's tourist commercial, and if we have the ability to okay or not okay residential through a special use permit, I think it'll be fine. And if you run into problems, you can always come back to us.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions? we have a motion?
Well, I guess the motion would be not to initiate code amendment. Okay, that'd be
Do we
my
have a
motion.
second? Mr. Schmidt?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Schmidt, not to pursue a code amendment. Questions? Ms. Ratty?
So if we go down this path of taking a formal action not to do something, then won't the prevailing side have to bring it back, and don't we go through that whole process? I mean, I'd rather see us just not take any action, and then if they need it expediently in the future, we can do that. So I'm not going to support the motion not to do it. I'm also not going to make a motion to do it. I'd like to just see us not take any action today.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Yeah, that's where I was kind of going with where I wanted to do, is just not give you any direction, so I kind of agree. I didn't make it.
Pull the motion.
Sure, I can withdraw the motion,
Okay.
as long as it's okay with Mr. Schmidt.
Motion's been withdrawn, so is there a motion? Seeing no motion, you have your direction.
Thank you.
God, look at this.
Okay, 9.1, comments from the council and city manager. Mr. Smith?
I would like staff to look in, I know Reno City Council just passed a resolution on noise, and I believe it had to do with loud music. If you would check into that, find out exactly what that was about, maybe we want to do the same thing. And also, I'd like some input from the chief on how it's enforceable. I'm not quite sure how they can enforce it unless there's a police cruiser sitting right next to somebody blaring that boombox or that loud bass.
Okay, got that, Mr. Driscoll? Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to follow through with a letter that I received last Monday, and according to the letter, 3 different department heads got a copy of the letter, as well as a member of the council from Reno Forklift. Had an opportunity to meet with Reno Forklift owner this morning. I think it's imperative that upper management of the city sit down and talk. It appears we have a problem that's been going a long time with billings from one department to another, and miscommunications on building permits and stuff, and there's 11 property owners or 11 businesses that are threatening to pull out of the city of Sparks when their lease are gone because of, continuing problems. And so I would like to see a meeting set on up with the department heads and Reno Forklift to get this problem resolved.
Got that, Mr. Driscoll?
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing no further business, we're adjourned.